In this video, I show you how to use huge one-octave slides called super slides in your lead guitar soloing and improvising. Super slides on guitar always sound great. The tricky part is getting the slides to be accurate and finding cool places to use them. Today, I'll show you how to do both. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do. I'm also going to show you how to insert super slides into a solo or build a solo based on this cool sliding technique. Hi, I'm Tom Hess. When I first heard super slides played on guitar, I loved the sound, but whenever I tried to use this technique myself, I had two very frustrating problems. First, I couldn't play the slides accurately and consistently. Sometimes the slide sounded good, other times it didn't and I would miss the note. So frustrating. Second, I didn't really know how to apply this super slide technique into guitar solos. I solved the first problem with a cool little trick that I'll show you later in this video. I solved the second problem by using a simple technique called octave displacement. I'll show you this too. So grab your guitar and let's get started. In this first example, we're basically just going to be ascending through a scale, where we're going to be applying the super slide to every note as we do so. Sounds pretty cool, and you can hear it's just basically a scale. I did skip one note, the E note of the scale. But as we play the notes, we're playing, the first fret, and then we're sliding up an octave. Then we're playing the next note, the third fret. Then we're sliding up an octave, applying some pretty heavy vibrato here. That's optional, but it sounds cool. And the point is, with just something very simple, like going up the G sharp minor scale in this context, and adding the octave slide to it, you have something that's pretty dramatic, and you take something which is pretty mundane and not that interesting, just playing the scale straight up. But with adding the super slide octave slides, it all of a sudden has a lot of life and it's more dramatic than if you had just played the scale straight without the slide. Now the key to being able to play this accurately and reliably is your eyes. It's not what your hands are doing, it's what your eyeballs are doing. So when you play a note, let's say the first fret down here on the G string, it's critical that your eyes are staring at the fret that you want to slide to. You have to be looking at that fret in advance. So don't watch your finger go up the string. You've got to, once you're in position here, you've got to be staring right there or wherever it is that you want to slide to. Okay? And then when it's time to go to the next note, you quickly look over to, in this case, the third fret. Once you're in position, you don't need to watch your hand do this, right? You got the note, and now you start staring at where you're going to go. In this case, it's going to be the 15th fret. So you're already staring in advance. If you can do that, you'll be able to do this with a pretty good degree of reliability and accuracy. If you don't do that, it's going to be very difficult, probably impossible, to do it accurately on a consistent basis. So that's a big little trick there for you. In this next example, we're going to descend through most of the notes in the scale, this time adding the super slide downwards on each note as we do. So there you have it. It sounds really, really cool, and it's much more interesting, again, than just playing the scale, descending straight without anything else added to it. Those super slides really make something very basic, very simple, like the little scale, sound much more dramatic. It's really cool. You can add a lot of feeling to your solos simply by adding it in here and there. You don't have to add it in on all the notes, of course, but anywhere where you add it, it's going to sound cool. Before we go any further, there's a more basic video that I've created for you on how to do the super slide technique, and that video is called Lead Guitar Technique Lesson Super Octave Slides. You might want to check that out before we go further, and then come on back to this one for the rest. So in this next example, we're changing keys to the key of E minor. I've created a little solo here without super slides, but then added super slides in to displace the phrases by an octave. And we'll talk a little bit about that when I'm done playing the solo. All right, so let me show you the opening phrase here. What the original phrase was this. So when I wrote the solo, it was originally, those were the first 4 notes. But then what I did was I took the 4th note of the phrase, that note right there, and I put it up here, an octave higher. So it became, that sounds more dramatic than this. That's cool. That's cooler, at least in my opinion. Now let's take a look at the second example. So originally I had this. That was the original lick. So the first half of it, as you see in the tablature, is still the same. And then what you see on the screen is this. An octave slide down. So this part here is just this part here, displaced by an octave. That's called octave displacement. You take a note or a phrase and you move it up or down by an octave or 2 octaves or whatever. So again, the original was this. And then it becomes this, what you're seeing on your screen now. So it sounds different. It adds a new life to it that wouldn't normally be there. It's very cool. Okay, the next measure in this little solo is really just, originally it was just 1 note. It's the final note of the previous phrase. That note lasts 1 measure long. So what you see on the screen is that note, open G, for a half note or so, and then you slide up an octave. So now the measure is divided between G in this octave and G in this octave. The first G being just a clean note, no vibrato, no bending, no slides, nothing. And then the second note, you can add heavy vibrato there if you like. Now, we could, if we wanted to add vibrato to the first note, there are a few different things we could do. If you've got a Floyd Rose, you can use that. You can do vibrato behind the nut, you could do that. Or we could have moved the note to the next string, 5th fret, and done vibrato there. But either way, breaking it up into 2 octaves gives it a really cool sound, and there's more drama to the note now. All right, now the next phrase was originally this, which is a very nice phrase. Very cool. And all I did was I just displaced the final note. Up to there. So it has it really just grabs you by the throat when all of a sudden you hear that high note. It's probably not expected. Most people are going to, when this string starts to come down to its resolution, you're expecting it to end here, right? But instead, you get it up there with some heavy vibrato, and it's a surprise, it's cool, so that that note has been displaced by an octave to add more drama. All right, now the next phrase is what originally was just this. That's really all it is. So we're bending up this B note to sound like C. Okay, that's all it is. But what we did here was take the last note, this C, and slide down here to this C an octave lower to get into our next phrase, which is down here in this 5th fret position. So we have... And actually, when I play the solo for real, I slide down with the 4th finger. So here you see I'm using finger 2 for the bend and the vibrato, but then I slide down with finger number 4 so I can get into the next phrase. All right, so now let's talk about the phrase that begins on that C note. So far, there's nothing special here. There's no octave displacement. There's no super slide. It's just a cool little guitar phrase. But that phrase ties to the next one, which is this. And there you hear that there is a super slide at the end. So the phrase is simply, the final 4 notes here is B, C, D, E, and then you go up an octave. And you can do as heavy vibrato as you want. I'm using the pinky vibrato here. And it's real aggressive on that whole, final chord there. Now let's hear everything back in context. So there you hear it sounds really, really cool when you put everything together. And again, if we took those super slides out and just played the phrases as they were originally written, we'd have a pretty cool solo. But with the octave slides, the super slides inserted, I think it's more interesting. It might be a little bit too much for some people's tastes, but I like it. Maybe you will too. All right, let's take a moment and talk about how do you practice these super slides on guitar, and how do you insert them into your own solos to be creative with them. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, I referenced another video here on YouTube which kind of goes over the basics of how to do the super slides. We talked a little bit earlier about how important it is that your eyes are staring at the note you want to slide to long before it's time for your hand to make the slide. If you start looking for the note as you're moving or a split second before you have to move your hand, it's too late. You're very likely going to make a mistake. So you want to be looking at the note before the hand moves. That's the most critical part. Now, in terms of how to use them, you can kind of approach this from 2 main ways. The first way is you can be thinking about super slides from the outset. So when you begin writing a solo or a melody or improvising, you could have this in mind as you create the phrases and the licks and the melodies of the solo. That's one way to do it. But I think it's probably going to seem more natural and not sound forced if you just go ahead and write your solo the way you would normally do, or improvise or write a melody as you normally would, then go back and look at it and look for opportunities to displace a phrase or half of a phrase or maybe one note of a phrase and displace it by an octave or more than an octave. These examples were all octave slides, but we could have slid more than an octave if we wanted to. So a super slide is basically any slide that is an octave or greater. And of course, you can slide to notes that are not an octave higher or lower. You could, a fifth or a fourth or any other interval you like. But I think that if you look for ways to insert it in an existing solo or lick or phrase, it'll sound more natural to use it and it won't sound forced. So just experiment around with it. Other than that, there aren't any other really big secrets to using the super slide technique, but it's a super awesome, very cool lead guitar technique that you can use in your soloing and your guitar phrasing and your improvising, all the time. It's very, very cool, and I encourage you to try it. If you want to learn more ways to take any lick that you know and make it sound even better, I'll show you how in my new free ebook titled The Secret to Adding Fire and Emotion to Any Guitar Lick. It's totally free. Click on the link below to download your copy and make every lick you know sound even better. If you like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, click on that notification bell so that YouTube tells you when I publish a new video, and hit that like button with a hammer. Let me know by leaving a comment below what other topics you'd like me to make new videos on. I often make new videos based upon requests that people have that they leave in the comments section below. I read all those comments, good, bad, ugly, silly, whatever. I read them all. So take care, and we'll see you next time.